Welcome to the Silhouettes of Success podcast with your host, successful entrepreneur, broker, and business mentor, Amber Weitzer. Because success comes in all shapes, sizes, and styles, the Silhouettes of Success podcast is shining the light on industrious women with a collection of curated conversations of intentional inspiration designed to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, feed your soul, and gift you with actionable insights directly from inspirational, everyday women who've shown tenacity, grit, and grace, having taken on the challenges in their lives and business and won. Remarkable, down-to-earth, and relatable, Amber and her guests will share with you uplifting and extraordinary real-life success stories, motivational ideas that just might help spark something within you. With the deepest desire to serve you, help you grow so you can begin to shine the light that will illuminate your very own silhouette of success. So, let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success. Our V.I.P featured guests spent close to 23 years at Levi Strauss Co, holding a variety of leadership positions. She began in 1999 as an entry-level marketing assistant and became the global brand president in 2020, the first woman to hold this post. As a child, she led an intense life of dedication, challenge, and competition. She won the United States National Gymnastics Championship title in 1986, less than 1 year after suffering a devastating injury at the 1985 World Championships. In 2008, she released a memoir, Chalked Up, a New York Times ebook bestseller. In 2020, with the release of Athlete A, an award-winning documentary on Netflix, she added Emmy-winning producer to her list of credits. In addition, lately, she is working on so many wonderful projects, a Substack newsletter called Say Everything. She's also currently producing and directing a feature-length documentary film and releasing a new book in November. After 28 years in the corporate world, she has left it all to speak her mind. Without further delay, Silhouettes, let's welcome Jennifer Sey to the show. Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Amber.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out to share, I guess I would say a portion of your silhouette of success with us. So thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
Well, great. So, of course, we can never put it all into a quick 30-minute segment, clearly. But to help illustrate the shaping of your silhouette of success, would you like to begin by sharing a little bit about your background with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a pretty unusual childhood. I'll hit this part quickly. I was an elite athlete, a gymnast, as you mentioned. So it was pretty intense childhood, training 5, 6 days a week from about 9 years old on. Moved away from home when I was 13. It was all great until it wasn't. The coaching culture is pretty cruel in gymnastics. A lot of that has been exposed at this point because of the Larry Nassar scandal. And so I grew up, dealing with the repercussions of that. It was very emotionally and physically abusive. But I went about my life. I went off to college and ended up living in the city of San Francisco. And I got my first quote unquote real job it was around 1994 in advertising. And I should say, this is not what I thought I wanted to do. I had no sort of great passion for it. In fact, I remember when I accepted the job, I thought, oh, I better not be doing this in 5 years. I had creative aspirations, but not a whole lot of confidence. By creative aspirations, I mean, I wanted to write, I wanted to make movies, but I just didn't have a lot of faith in my ability to do so. I think, the years spent in the gym of being belittled and berated didn't do much for my confidence, despite my successes in the sport. So, I started this advertising career and I was good at it and it was fun. So I just kept going. And, lo and behold, close to 30 years later, I was still in the business, not the business of advertising, but, I ended up at Levi Strauss Co in 1999, and I started as an entry-level assistant, and I worked my way all the way up to brand president. I really made my mark there as the chief marketing officer. I held that role for 8 years and was a big part of helping the company go public. and really a big part of the recovery there. And I really, I loved it. I felt like the culture was, let me be myself. And it just, felt in sync with my values. I love the actual product. I wore it. I still wear it despite what was an unfortunate end to my time there, which we can talk a little bit about. But I think my journey can be sort of defined by having had this childhood that was, as I said, obedience was instilled in me to such a, I would say, dangerous level almost. I was willing to do things out of sheer obedience that went against my best interests. It was very hard to kind of break free from that as an adult and to kind of learn to listen to myself, to use my voice, that everything wasn't my fault. And so that was sort of a 3 decades long journey. And writing a book, which you mentioned, in 2008 certainly helped with that, making the film. And now I have a book coming out November 15th, which I think continues that journey.
Well, there is so much in what you just shared. It's just, I hear it in your voice. I guess I can almost, pseudo feel it over the airwaves here. The opportunity that you have to be your voice, it sounds like there's a lot of unlearning now for you and the liberation of that.
Yeah, I think that's a process for everyone. I think
Mhm.
women in particular may struggle with this. At least that's been, my experience in the corporate workplace. We're easily convinced that we're wrong or unworthy, or, what we think we see is not what we see. And, I started at a real deficit given my childhood where basically anything short of silence and do exactly as we tell you to do, no questions asked, was considered almost profane. You just did what they said to do every single day, no matter how unrealistic. I trained on a broken ankle for 2 years. We were often told, lose 2 pounds by tomorrow by any means possible. And, I was a 18-year-old who weighed 97 pounds and didn't yet menstruate. Like I didn't have a lot of weight to lose, but there was an obsession around weight. And of course, as with any abusive sort of situation, if you provoke their anger, my coaches in this case, it's your fault. You think that you're hungry, but they're telling you you're fat. You think that you're working as hard as you can, and they're telling you that you're a lazy piece of garbage. And so I explain all of this just to say you then are released into the world as a semi-adult. And again, you think everything is your fault all the time. That's the dynamic. And it's very disorienting. And so, it took many, many years for me to trust my own eyes and ears, and to believe myself and what I saw as the truth, not my truth, but the truth. And I think the first sort of real awakening moment with that was at 40 when I published my book, which really did expose the abusive culture. And, even after publishing it, I sort of felt bad. I should have protected these people. But, so that ongoing process is, this is the truth. This is what happened. I owe none of these people who abuse children protection. I don't owe them protection of their reputation. But it was very difficult when the book came out. The community, the youth sports community, the Olympic movement was not ready for this message. The gymnastics community, and I was really dragged pretty bad. And again, so you're going through it all over again. You find the courage to say the thing, and then everybody calls you terrible names, and they call you a liar and a grifter. But eventually, folks came around. It took about 10 years, though. And it really took the case of Larry Nasser for folks to say, okay, maybe she had a point. And that really gave me more confidence, again, in my own voice. And so the thing is, you have to believe that voice. You have to believe your own eyes and ears. And even if folks are saying you're wrong, if that's what you see and that's what you experienced, that is the truth. And you just keep at it. And that obviously goes well beyond the sport for me. And I would say, coming up in corporate America, I always was sort of a bit quiet at first, because I would sit and listen to everybody in the room and everything seemed so complicated, and I thought, oh, I understand this. but maybe I'm oversimplifying. Like I just second guess myself all the time. Until finally, probably 10 years into my career, I realized my ability to take complicated, complex situations and simplify, streamline, and turn into action. That was actually my skill as a leader. And I would not be made to feel dumb because I was able to do that complicated thing, which is to simplify.
A lot of our audience tunes in for best practices and how does she do it and how does she get through this and all these different things. And what you have been able to do for yourself is so much what a lot of us out here strive to find or even pinpoint what is going on, and so many things that you're talking about, finding your voice. And I would just say to you that what you're doing is elevating others to find their courage to even maybe look at oneself and say, oh, maybe it is this, because of that self-doubt, that awful self-doubt.
Yeah, and like I said, women seem to be afflicted with it
Yeah.
more than men.
Yes.
I mean, that's a very broad statement, and hopefully it's changing. But in my
Yeah.
experience,
Right.
women seem to more often suffer from imposter syndrome. Feeling they don't deserve to be in a certain place. I certainly felt that way when I went off to college. I went to Stanford University, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, any day now they're going to kick me out. They're going to realize they shouldn't have let me in and they're going to kick me out. And almost every job I ever held, probably until I landed in that chief marketing officer job, which was 2013, I just felt, oh no, someone's going to discover one day that I really am not very bright. It was just this constant, constant self-doubt. And using your voice and trusting what you see and the way you think about things does not mean not to accept feedback and input. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. I think feedback can be a gift, but you are the one that gets to sift through it, decide what you're going to take, what you're not going to take, how that matches up with where you want to go, and then do with it what you will. Because there came a point in my career where I was getting so much conflicting feedback. You're too values led, you talk too fast, you talk too slow, you move too fast, what are you doing? Like, it was just all over the place. And that's when I started to think, okay, I'm going to take what makes sense to me, I'm going to match that up with my goals, and I'm going to use it to get where I'm going. But you actually get to reject some feedback if it doesn't sync up with your understanding of your skill set, of the challenge at hand. And I'll give you a very specific example of this without naming any names. And I do write about this in my upcoming book. But not once, but twice during my time at Levi's, two of the brand presidents before I had that role told me I would never be a chief marketing officer. They told me I wasn't creative enough, I didn't have any vision, I had lacked the leadership capability, I was a great number two. They called me a great operator, which means you can get stuff done, but you're not going to figure out what needs to be done and lead an organization. And I just remember sitting there and receiving this feedback, and it was like I was supposed to be grateful, that they were setting me straight. I better set realistic expectations for myself. And I just thought, no, that's just, you're wrong. That's false. I don't accept this feedback. Thank you. Moving on. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to do that when I was younger. I would have taken it as gospel, and I would have reset my expectations for myself. So it was only with age, I was close to 40 when this news was delivered to me twice. And I rejected it. I did. I rejected it.
You were discovering your principles and where you stood, and it's just so amazing. It's so amazing the different journeys and how sometimes they can parallel with someone else's because it's so relatable. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, I so
Thank
agree
you.
with that.
Oh,
It's why I love reading. I love
mm,
memoirs.
yes.
I don't read business books. I know you're going to ask me probably some book suggestions, but it was a joke at the company. I'd always joke that I never read a business book because I can't. They're boring to me. But I love memoir. And it's because of what you say. And I think, even if a person's story has nothing to do with my life, there's usually there's an arc of overcoming some sort of adversity, and that is very relatable in the broadest sense. So I really enjoy memoir
Well,
for that reason.
super. Well, and that's why you're here with us. So let's switch it up a little bit and talk about, because again, so the audience is getting to know you if they don't already. You are on a completely different journey and this new chapter for you. The alarm clock goes off and your day begins. I always, used to say work or business but your day begins. What does a day in the life look like right now for you? You've got so many great projects going on. Do you maintain
Yeah,
structure still, or are you more spontaneous? Where are you at with that?
I try to give myself some structure. And just to be clear, in case it wasn't clear, I no longer work at Levi's. I worked there close to 23 years. I was essentially ousted from the company because I was outspoken about prolonged school closures during COVID, and that was not okay with with folks there. So I am on my own now. I find myself at 53, starting a new career. I do try to create some structure without being sort of overly rigid about it. I have two young children, even though I'm 53. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so I'm up with them to get them off to school. I usually so the projects that I'm working on, as you articulated, I do write a Substack called Say Everything, Say spelled like my name. I am making a documentary film about the impact to children and families from the school closures. And I have a book coming out in, just about 2 weeks. So I spent most of the summer writing the book. I wrote it very quickly in about 2 to 3 months. Now I'm spending time out, talking to folks about the book who are interested in talking with me, people like you. But my summer looked pretty much like writing all day, every day, with a little bit of documentary filmmaking in between. But I try to create some structure. I get up early. Still, I get up around 6:30. I get the kids off. I do some writing or some work on the film. I usually get some exercise. I'll do that in a two-parter because it breaks up my day. So I might go for a walk in the morning and then, do a bike ride in the afternoon, something like that. But I definitely build that structure into almost every day. I'm super disciplined about getting exercise. I find it clears my mind. My body feels better. Everything just works better when I do that. But I do have a rule when I am exercising, because I had sort of a fraught relationship with it for a long time because of the intensity of my training as a child. So for a long time, I didn't do any exercise. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I really kind of got consistently back into it. I'd had spurts, throughout my adult life. But my rule for myself is don't make it so hard that you're miserable and you never want to do it again. It's all about consistency more than intensity. So that's just my goal. And if one day I feel like pushing myself, fine. But I really, really try to make it enjoyable so that I keep doing it every day, because that's what builds good health over time. If I push myself to the point of misery, I'm inevitably going to quit, and that's not good. So that's the structure. I take my kids to their activities in the afternoon, swimming and soccer and stuff like that, and then probably sit down in the evening and catch up on all the emails that I missed during the day. So it's a loose structure. I mean, it's certainly not as rigid as it was when I was in corporate, where you're, sort of working this very rigid, schedule. I have time to fit in things I want to do, but I still try to give it a frame.
As what I would, I guess, maybe phrase fairly recent, independent, you're doing so many great things. Author, producer, mama bear, all these things that you're doing. Speaker, where do you turn to for support?
My husband, a
Yeah.
1,000%, it's
Yeah.
him. He is a stay-at-home dad. So when I was working full-time at Levi's in the office, and then from home for a couple of years, he really handles absolutely everything. With the kids, it's nice now. I get to do a little more than I did before, so I'm enjoying that. But it's more than that. He just provides immense support. he's happy for me to succeed. There's no jealousy, there's no sort of resentment that I have a bit of a spotlight. I mean, he is just so happy to be supportive in all things that I want to do. And that's such a gift. But I would say I learn from him so much every day. He, more than any person I've ever met, I say this a lot. I used to say it kind of as a joke, but it's totally true. Like, he just doesn't care what people think of him. He says what he thinks, he does what he thinks is right. And as outspoken as I've been on a variety of subjects, starting with my first book, Exposing the Abuse in the Sport, I take it very hard when people are mad at me and call me names and, drag me around the internet or push me out of my job. Like, it's very difficult for me. And he just constantly reminds me to do what I believe is right and to use my voice and to make myself bigger, not smaller for anybody else. And he models that behavior. And so it's inspiring to me. And we don't have to agree all the time, but I always know he says exactly what he thinks. And that is very unique in this world.
It is such a blessing, and he's arming you by being that living, breathing example right there. Right? So you've
Yeah.
got that support. That is um, just a sincere gift and blessing. What a great opportunity to have him by your side and in your world. So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, he always says, I'm always on your side.
Yeah.
Even when we disagree,
Yeah.
I'm always on your side. You're the one.
Sure.
You're my one. So, and I, of course, feel the same way. So, and yeah, it's been difficult in the last few years. I know a lot of couples, you're home all the time, you're together all the time. That's a lot. I know couples that have absolutely struggled, and it's completely understandable. And I will say we've gotten stronger. I think we have fun together, even in stressful times. I find him intellectually challenging. I think he would say the same about me. We have the same kind of view about what we want for our children and how to raise them. And so it's just, for us, it's made us even stronger, I would say, the last couple of years.
Talking about that too a little bit, this might be a great segue. Thinking through the last couple of years and the changes and the growth and all these different things, are you able to share with us maybe some positive adjustments that you've made in your life or environment to help support you in all these projects that which we're going to touch on here in a second? Can you think of anything to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this sounds very sort of practical, but this commitment to getting out and moving my body every day has kept me sane. I think I'm more physically healthy now at 53 than I was at 38. It's just every day I get out there, I get fresh air, I get sunshine, I move around. No matter how busy I am, I always fit it in. Time with my family. I have more time with my family. So that is a habit that I want to stick with. We don't sit down every single night and eat dinner, but most nights during the week we sit and we do that together. And that's a lovely thing, just to kind of catch up and hear about everyone's day. And then I don't know if this is as much of a habit, but this idea of kind of keeping some structure in my day, but injecting things I want to do. I didn't have that
Yeah.
opportunity in the corporate world. I was pretty much 8 to 6, sometimes much later than that. Usually, I was in a global role. So all the Asia emails and calls would start at 5 p.m. for me. There was sort of no end to the day. But I try to give my day more of a start and end now, so I really do have time where I shut the computer and, don't answer emails. I might do a quick check before I go to bed, but I try to kind of leave real space in the day to see a friend for lunch or to go to my kid's soccer game and to have a life that isn't work. And that's really difficult right now because my work right now are my own projects. It's not somebody else's project. It's not a corporate project. It's mine. So I could very easily work all day, every day. I mean, I love it. I love the work that I'm doing. But I still think it's important to step away. So I just try to build those moments into my day. Like after I talk to you, I'm going to meet a friend for lunch. I just try to build in some breaks. I think it's healthy.
That is fantastic. And we, especially as we've talked about different things particular to women, which is our target audience, clearly, but we forget to put ourselves on that list.
It's so true.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
especially, yeah.
I spent, I have two older children who are both, out of the house at this point, 22 and 19, and I spent my 30s just no time, for myself. I worked and worked and worked, spent every moment outside of work making sure their needs were cared for, and I felt like I was failing at everything. I wasn't good enough at work. I wasn't good enough as a mom because I wasn't a stay at home mom. I just felt constantly like a failure. But seeing them grow up and, I'm so proud of them both, and they're smart and thoughtful and kind and very creative. And I go, wait, I did just fine. I did
That's
fine.
right. Yeah.
And so give yourself a break, Jen. It's okay if you don't make every game. It's okay if you don't make every parent teacher conference, even if your husband's there, you're a team. You can split this stuff up, give yourself a break, and go for a run, or, do whatever you want to do. It's not frivolous to take some time for yourself. And I just did not do that at all in the sort of first 15 years of motherhood.
Well, it's your time. It's your time. So I'm looking at the clock and I like to keep us always on time. I want to, if you have a few extra minutes,
Sure.
just squeeze some things in because I
Yep.
want you to be able to share. Okay, great. You have some amazing upcoming projects that you're working on and the book release in November. But goodness, you're right. That's 2 weeks that you're going to have that date, isn't it? It's close to
Yeah,
2 weeks.
It's November 15th. So I think that's
Okay.
just about 2 weeks, and it's available now on pre-sale. So um, yeah, doing lots of work to get that launched right now.
Groovy. We will make sure and, of course, always include the resources here and the show notes so the audience can do a quick click on that. Talk to us about the inspiration that led you to create. You mentioned early on storytelling. That was one of the first things you shared as you embarked on your career, and that's coming back around for you. So, talk to us about the two, the book and the documentary you're working on.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of cool, really. I was able to have this successful corporate career, which was not necessarily what I had wanted to do or intended for my life. What I wanted was to make stuff, to tell stories, and I was able to do that while I worked a corporate job. I did write one memoir and produced a film, and now here I am in my early 50s, and I get to do it full time. So I'm going to take full advantage of it. So I get to spend my time doing what I thought I wanted to do when I was 20, but lacked the confidence. So it's a real gift, and at some point I might go back into the corporate world. I miss some of it, not the corporate part necessarily, but the team aspect, being part of a team, achieving a goal together. I spend a lot more time alone now. I mean, I got my husband, but like I liked the big team. I mean, I managed a team of 1,000 people. I liked setting a
Yeah.
vision for a team and achieving a goal together. So it's possible I will go back, but for now I'm reserving 1 to 2 years of my life to focus on these projects, the book and the film. Then I will, see where I am at the end of that. If there are opportunities for me, if I want that, or if there's more opportunities to write and make films, that would be, again, such a gift at this point in my life, as it's the thing I wanted to do 30 years ago.
Well, you definitely are in a pursuit for a purpose. And so I look forward to seeing what that next phase looks like for you.
Me too. I'll let you know
Yes.
how it goes.
I know, right? We'll do a part two, but for now, of course, enjoying this time and enjoying this journey. So you mentioned earlier, you teased that yes, I am going to pick your brain for any favorite resources. Of course, the audience, I want you to mention your books. But is there anything else you'd want to share as far as even some favorite memoirs that might be inspirational to our audience?
Yeah, I've had a real lapse in my book reading in the last 2 years, unfortunately, but I'm trying to get back to it. So I set a goal for myself this year to just read a book a month, and I'm doing pretty well there. I spent about 10 years reading only addiction memoirs, which was sort of a weird and crazy thing, never having been an addict. But I related to the kind of compulsions and the obsessiveness and that sort of recovery process. Um, my favorite, wow, it's so hard to pick a favorite. My favorite addiction memoir, Caroline Knapp, Drinking a Love Story, is a really beautiful, heartbreaking memoir. I have a million more. Gosh, my shelves are filled with memoir. This year I read Tarana Burke's memoir. I think it's called Unbound, which was inspiring as well. But mostly what I read lately, I really am appreciating these sort of heterodox thinkers, people, often journalists, not always, sometimes academics who kind of challenge the headlines, challenge the mainstream narratives and orthodoxies of the day. Oftentimes they're journalists who were sort of ousted from their big corporate journalism jobs, people like Matt Taibbi. I really appreciate his thinking. Barry Weiss, Michael Schellenberger, John McWhorter. They all have Substacks. I'm obsessed with Substack because that's where you can kind of say what you really think. And I may not agree with these folks all the time, but they challenge my thinking and go beyond the headlines, to kind of challenge the narratives, and I think inspire me again to continue to trust my own take and my own eyes and ears after gathering information. So that's kind of where I spend my time reading these days.
That's awesome. But is it the not having to agree? I mean, that's the beauty of all of it,
I
right?
mean,
I mean, come
yes,
on.
yes, but
That's how we grow, but you have to, I think we've lost touch with
we
a lot of that.
Yes, we really,
Yes.
really have, and it's really unfortunate. And we've lost the ability to talk to people that we disagree with. We have little tolerance for open debate and dissent, and I find it quite concerning and heartbreaking, frankly, because it's undemocratic for one, but also how do we find truth if we can't debate and disagree with each other? How do we generate empathy if we can't even have a conversation and dismiss someone as just evil because they disagree with us on one thing? So I really try to seek out. I have a new home. I lived in San Francisco for over 30 years, and I now live in Denver. And I'm meeting all sorts of different people with different backgrounds and different views. And I really appreciate having conversations that are challenging. It doesn't mean I have to change my mind. I might, though. I
Yeah.
absolutely might, and I have on certain issues, but sometimes I don't at all, and that's okay too. And so that's why I appreciate these writers and journalists that I mentioned, because I think they do that for an audience. They challenge our thinking in a really important way.
Adjusting just a nudge, just to embrace that compassion and just common courtesy sometimes, and then you'd be so amazed with what you're you're able to hear with your ears and appreciate with your heart and mind. So I value everything that you've got going on, and you're right, not everybody has to agree, but that's the beauty of the whole. That's
Yeah,
that's just it. So all right, milady, I'm not going to keep you any further, even though I'd love to. So we will have to do a part two one day.
awesome,
Yes,
awesome.
in keeping the promise to share intentional inspiration with the audience, and as we begin to wrap up, do you have a key piece of go-to advice that resonates with you or that you hold dear that you'd like to share with the audience?
Use your voice. Say the
Yeah.
thing. 62% of Americans say they don't feel that they can say what they really think. The only way we change that is if you do it. So do it.
Awesome. And for the audience, that's SEY. Say
That's
the
right.
thing.
Yeah, right.
Right. We'll change it
Right.
up. All right, milady. This stage is all yours completely. Where can our audience go to find and connect with you, whether it be on your socials or website, and continue to support you in your future success?
Okay. Well, There's a bunch of info, and even the book is available for pre-sale at levisunbutton.com, but you can also find it on Amazon and learn a little bit more about the content there. It's also on barnesandnoble.com. I am an active Twitter user. It's just my name, Jennifer Sey. That's my handle. And again, Sey is S-E-Y. I share lots of fun family pics and stuff on Instagram. I love Instagram, Jen Sey SF. And then everywhere else, like LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff, it's just my name. I keep it simple. I don't use fake names or fake handles. It's just my name.
Because she keeps it real, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer, it has been a privilege and a pleasure listening and talking with you. And thank you. You are a true light. I will just say from me to you, an inspiration. And I know that the audience feels the same way. And we will be sure and share all of the social media and the contacts in the resource section. So thank you once again for spending some time with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Amber. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Silhouettes of Success podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all the new episodes. We are here for you and with you. We encourage you to share this podcast on all your socials and pass on the light to help illuminate another silhouette of success. To find out the latest ways to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, and gain actionable insights, subscribe at thesilhouettesofsuccess.com or connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We're grateful that you tuned in. Remember, you are exactly where you need to be, right here with us. This is the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success.